Hey folks, welcome in. Today we're going to try something completely different. I'm going to narrate over my Kenshi playthrough. I thought it would be so much fun. If you all want me to keep doing these, update it and such, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. But anyway, so what the frick is a Kenshi? Well, Kenshi is a futuristic post-apocalyptic game that takes place on the moon of Kenshi. In Kenshi, genocide is, well, normal. Slavery and starvation are pretty much just the rules of existence here. In Kenshi, you're not special. As a matter of fact, you're lower than the floorboard on the food chain, and even the lowliest of trash mobs will absolutely dumpster you, and possibly eat you. But if you grit your teeth and knuckle up and take the beatings and stick it out, maybe you can turn yourself into something strong. And with enough work, maybe even heroic. The world of Kenshi, though, is coming apart at the seams. The three largest factions are in perpetual gridlock, constantly warring. You can try to tip the balance, but every action in Kenshi has world-impacting consequences. Most simply try to survive. And on this blasted and unforgiving moon, for most, that's enough. But not for YL. YL was born as a citizen of the Holy Nation, one of the three largest factions in Kenshi. YL was always a devout follower of Okrin, the Lord of Light, just as his father before him. He felt fortunate each day being born as the pure race, and a man, which was kind of a big deal in the Holy Nation. He looked up to the Paladin, training hard and aspiring to join their ranks himself. They were enacting Okrin's will, his wrath. They were so much closer to the Lord of Light than he was as a simple miner. They were many. The Holy Nation army was one of the largest in Kenshi, but still, there was wickedness on all sides. Unholy beings constantly seeking to destroy them. YL never questioned his faith. He felt it always within him. His mother's nighttime lullabies still ushered him to sleep at night, whispering nurturing reminders of Okrin's love. He'd been told horror stories as a child of the mechanical beings that roamed around the world of Kenshi. While he'd never ventured far enough from the Holy Nation territory to encounter one himself, all he possessed was hatred for their kind, and all the other many agents of Narco in this world. For now, he simply needed to eat, survive, and gain a following of people that shared his ambition. So this starts on day 28, but don't worry, all you missed was a lot of bonking rocks. A chunk of this playthrough was done on stream, and then I began recording it all from this point forward. This is a Holy Nation playthrough. It's also my first real full playthrough, so we have a lot of major goals to accomplish here. Now, due to a real-life situation, I didn't have access to internet for some time, so during this time, I recorded hundreds of clips from this gameplay, from this playthrough. Currently, the playthrough is on like day 650 or something silly, and I can only imagine by the time I finish what I hope to accomplish in this run, I'll be looking at like 800 days, at least. Honestly, I'm excited to get there. I'm excited for the next playthrough even. Seriously, I'm looking at doing like a high-res only run next. I love those little buggers. Anyhow, I'm so gonna burn through all my B-roll footage in the freaking intro at this rate. So here's the rules for my playthrough. Now, YL is gonna be a law-abiding citizen of the Holy Nation, and unless something extreme affects his judgment, he will continue to be. He also doesn't believe in deceptive practices such as stealing or assassination or stealth. He's a paladin. He uses a fuck you sword and heavy armor. No crossbows or anything like that on the paladin. And here's the big one: no prosthetics. With this in mind, I have to be super cautious regarding my guys' limbs in the early game when they have shitty stats. A character losing an arm sucks, but you can work with it. They can still kind of be productive. But if someone loses a leg, they're completely useless in Kenshi. Because of how the game works, they can't operate anything and they'll be incredibly slow. So a lost leg in the early game is basically the same thing as them dying. Actually, it might even be worse because they're still gonna eat my food. Oh, recruitment. Yeah, I know, start the frickin' thing. But I want everybody to understand the self-imposed limitations that I set to be lore appropriate to a proper Holy Nation playthrough. Obviously, humans only. Greenlanders or Scorchlanders are acceptable, and since I've seen female farmers at the Holy Nation farms, I felt it was acceptable to recruit females, but I would only allow them to do the jobs at the bases, and obviously not be paladin, or simply bros before hoes or robos. Now, my major goals, I want to complete all the tasks given by the Phoenix. I know this means taking out the Flotsam, and then a campaign against the Shek, and then a campaign against the United Cities, and I was hoping to cap top it all off by clearing out the unholy skeleton mess down in the Ashlands. Now this is a lot to do, so we need to get started. The first recruit was Little, a man of shorter stature, but a stout fighter. Second, Old Man Photo, a bit of a crackpot, but he had a good deal of experience in engineering, which they were going to need. While as well recruited Fu and Streak. Fu was originally a skilled swordswoman. She was initially reluctant to set down her blades, but she did. Weil would not allow women to touch blades. They would be his farmers, his laborers, his cooks, and his crafters in his employment, and anyone in his following would carry a copy of the Holy Flame at all times and participate in prayer day. Anyone found impure would be sent to rebirth. A select few, a handful of pious and strong men, would be the paladin. So, I should mention a thing that I did on stream and I totally goofed on recording. Weil started this playthrough by immediately running to Flotsam Village, talking to Maul, and flipping her off, telling her to go fuck herself, and stating that he was faithful to the Holy Nation. After narrowly escaping the savage beating that she and her guards would have given him, he returned to Bad Teeth, and here he would mine the copper near the rear gate. The guards were in earshot, and honestly, bandits didn't really seem to venture near there, so it was relatively safe, and he was gonna need some cats to get established. Now, pissing off Mole immediately sets you at 70 reputation with the Holy Nation, and I figured since this is a Holy Nation playthrough, this was the best way to immediately be allied with them. It also sets the Flotsam ninjas to hostile to you, which would be a problem once he decided to establish a base. For the meantime, his followers at home would mine copper to be sold at the local merchants for a source of income, and Weil would go on scouting missions, running the local farms, the other cities in the Holy Nation. He was fast enough that he could outpace most of the threats in the Okrins Gulf. If he was to establish anything, he needed to learn, and while the old man was an impressive engineer, he knew better than to rely on anyone but himself. Every book he acquired only widened his eyes to how much he didn't know. Little was a former thief. He couldn't help but look at all the nice and expensive things within the Holy Army barracks. They recognized him as a follower of YL, allowing him to come and go as he pleased, and even sleep in their beds when weary. It would have been so easy. He looked at the pile of holy rags in his inventory, sighing to himself. He could just stuff these down his pants. Nobody could see him at the top of this tower. Nobody, except Okrin, maybe. He put the holy uniform back in the barrel. Heading down the long, winding stairwell to exit the tower, he felt finally he was above petty theft. This man, the villain they called him, due to his quiet and thoughtful nature. He was a mountain of a man through years of beating large rocks into small rocks. That damn cross is bigger than I am. Weil met him at the exit. He'd been waiting for him. He looked Little over, and after a pause, handed him the Holy Cross, Paladin's choice weapon. Little would be the first of Weil's Paladin, and they began to train. Running the bags of heavy minerals made them faster and stronger every day. Takao was the next to join, the new addition forcing Weil to invest in more real estate. They purchased a crumbling and abandoned longhouse in the city. This had the needed space for beds, storage, and a bench to begin researching the skills they would need to eventually establish their own base. Wanting to protect his followers, and in particular their limbs, Weil invested most of their early cats into the best armors he could find. In these lands, loss of limb would be permanent, as only unholy creatures bind prosthesis to their skin. They would need a pack animal of some sort to move all the materials they would need to get established, so Weil bought Carl, who immediately got stuck in the freaking floor. Kenshi! Reese and Kenshi, it is absolutely normal thing to see a man sprint by carrying a bull. Weil effectively used Carl as a second backpack while traveling around. He was constantly ramping his training up. He needed to be the fist of Okrin, to destroy the agents of Narco in Kenshi. And then he met Griffin. Griffin charged a healthy 10,000 cats for his service, but he was a remarkable swordsman. On joining, Weil immediately handed him a cross, and he set to work teaching him and his fellow paladin to use the sword. And soon, Brother Bard as well joined, a whimsical man that was known for singing in bars. He took the final cross. Little, Takao, Griffin, and Brother Bard would be his paladin. They had uniforms. They donned the traditional almost white chest plates of the Holy Nation Paladin, chainmail shirts to protect their sword arms, and turbans to keep the whipping sands from their eyes that frequented their land, or visored helmets that they would don in combat. For the love of frick, why is it so hard to walk up these stairs, Kenshi? They needed enough strength to wield this heavy gear, to wield their crosses with impunity, and ideally be able to carry a couple extra things on them like food and bandages, so they needed to strength train. A lot. Training montage? Training montage! Oh yeah! They'd all become quite strong. The next step was to dive into the world and let it spit them out. They needed to endure Kenshi now to become stronger. Weil had seen river raptors regularly attacking the holy farms, and they would head there first. Not only would this aid the local farmers, but they'd likely be able to use their beds to heal any injuries they might sustain. If any of them took serious wounds to their arms or legs during combat, he would immediately send them to mend their wounds and rest. So they trained themselves in combat by hunting these packs of raptors, gradually working up to larger and larger packs. They would defend the crops and hunt down the large roaming packs of raptors, very narrowly escaping several fights. Back at home, Old Man Photo was left in charge of establishing and building a weapon workbench. Once crafted, he began trying his hand at forging holy crosses. Unfortunately, this called for iron instead of copper, which sold for considerably less and was much heavier cargo. They needed much of the income from their copper mining to feed all of them, so Griffin took the task of mining and hauling the iron they would need to begin forging crosses. Being a capable fighter, he was the most likely to be able to defend themselves against the hungry bandits that would occasionally roam nearby. Weil and his paladin began running shipments of steel plating and building materials from the capitals of the Holy Nation. They would need a massive stockpile in order to establish a base, particularly since they would be exposed to being attacked until the walls were established. On one of these supply runs, they recruited Logan. He claimed to be very skilled on a turret, and they were soon to be in need of such skills. After a while narrowly saved him from being eaten by Kenshi's version of the Paw Patrol, they returned to base. Right, so Carl kind of died off camera. He was doing his no doubt favorite thing in the universe, being hauled around like an enormous satchel by racist mongoloids. And I think he took a fatal hit on one of the cargo runs. It's Kenshi, shit happens. So enter Scarlet, who managed to spawn not in the floor as an extra bonus. Weil called Logan to the field, and while he planned on using him primarily on a mounted turret, he felt all of them should experience combat. They all needed to be as strong as possible for what was to come. They spent several weeks in the field, becoming well known by the farmers of the region, and while their skills with the cross were novice at best, all the strength training they had done allowed them to manage the large blades with ease, even weighted down by the chainmail and heavy plates. Soon, they were greeted with open arms and lifted spirits as they approached. With the raptor threats culled, the farmers were able to harvest all of their crops. For this moment, they prospered, and it brought a smile to their face. A rare and dangerous thing in Kenshi. See? Okay, well, maybe he's not smiling. But they're happy, I promise. Weil saw their progress slow. There was simply not enough raptors. It was time to move on. They would visit each capital and purchase all the building materials they had in stock. It was time to move out of the city and establish something for themselves. They loaded everything they had stockpiled, and hopefully it was enough. Building a base, establishing a foothold in Kenshi was an exciting and terrifying task. Word of their efforts would travel quickly, and to a group of seasoned bandits, a freshly built establishment was impossible to resist. Today was the day. At first light, they all gathered in the middle of town. Everything here had been stripped bare, disassembling some things to bring them along. They had added in Sister Tsao and Sister Inu to the ranks, knowing they would need a good deal of workers to labor the wheat fields they planned to establish. Their efforts of research had taught them to construct a storm house, which is a large, defensible building for them to hold up in and until they could establish walls and gates. Mounted crossbows could be built on the roof, the door could be barricaded, maybe it would hold. Knowing the magnitude of building materials they needed, they set to work establishing a stone mine and a processor to convert it. Wild had scouted the location during his many trips through the valley, and they would establish directly in the middle of Okran's pride and reap the lush fertility of their home. They were a stone's throw from the throne, and the constant patrols of High Paladin and their small armies would also potentially ward away some threats. Even still, the base design needed to be smart. They built the base in 2 sections, with a large stream dividing the two. The left section would be for their farms and food production, and the right side would become the new smithy for Old Man Photo and their barracks. Any aspiring attackers would be forced to swim up the river a good distance before they even reached the gate, which would give their mounted crossbows plenty of time to thin their ranks before they were forced into the skirmish. At least, that's how it would work in concept, once the walls exist. The Black Dragon Ninjas did not wait for said walls to erect, just showing up and taking all of our shit. Fortunately, Wild had invested most of their remaining cats into hiring the assistance of the 2 local mercenary bands. These staunch warriors would hold the line while our crossbows targeted down any of them that tried to beat through the barricaded door. Eventually, the mercenaries fell. The Black Dragon started quickly cutting into the heavy door. Takao did a little teleporting action here. Unfortunately, a quick pickup pulled him back inside. Even with the efforts of Photo and Wild repairing the door from the other side, it wasn't going to hold long. If they breached the door, the battle was likely lost. There was no chance that these guys could hold up against this many Black Dragon Ninja. In close quarters, their heavy crosses are also more of a burden than a blessing. Their base and their survival relied entirely on the Black Dragon not breaching the door. It was close, but nothing compared to what Kenshi had in store for Wild and his following. The next day was prayer day, and the focus of labor was now single-minded. Their mercenaries were all dead or badly maimed from the battle, the cost of doing business. They raced to finish their walls, everyone doing their part to aid in the construction, and nobody even noticed the massive band of dust bandits that had walked into the middle of their base. 2 bandit raids in less than a day. They expected to be attacked, but this was unrelenting. It's tax day, motherfucker! Pay your dues, 2,000 cats. Hurry up, I'm busy. Wild knew the eyes of the following were upon him. His gauntlet smashed into the man's skull like a sledgehammer colliding with a gallon of water. The audible pop of bones singing through the air as his jaw cracked and his blood spattered all over the villain. The bandit leader was so humiliated from the exchange that he retreated with his tail tucked between his legs. They would certainly return, this time with many more bandits. Efforts on the walls continued. Despite managing to hold off the Black Dragon raid, they'd managed to steal off a good amount of the food stockpile. They spent every cat they owned on food from the capital. Once the walls were up, they would begin to cultivate the land for farming, but for now, food was another clock that was running out. 2 days later, the Dust Bandits returned. Their leader was all healed up, or mostly patched up, and brought a lot more fighters this time. And the game crashed. When I loaded back in, the bandit raid just didn't happen. But don't worry, my base gets fucked up in this playthrough. Plenty of that. A couple days without raids afforded them the breathing room they needed to finish the walls, and so the heart of Okran was established. Wild had purchased books and maps to learn about the world around them. They had foes on all sides. He'd spend his days and nights planning out the road ahead for them. And here's where I think I'm going to leave the first video. Let me know what you guys think. If you want me to continue making these, please react, update, comment, all that jazz, and I'll see you in the next one. Mwah.